I had flown into worse places than Hesh. I want that on the record first, because of everything that came after. People keep asking me if I knew, if there was some feeling in my gut when we broke the cloud deck and saw the shelf world lying gray and wet below us. There wasn't. I had put down on rock that spat lightning and on ice that groaned like a living thing under the skids, and Hesh, from the air, looked like nothing. A flat gray plate under a flat gray sky, the whole surface drowned in a fog that never lifted and never thinned, just sat there the way still water sits in a dead man's bath. The only one on my craft who sat up when we came through the deck was the dog. His name was Rook. He was a Belgian Malinois, and he was old. Old the way working dogs get old, which is to say all at once and stubbornly, the muzzle going gray a year before the rest of him admitted anything was wrong. He'd been a detection dog for the Corps before either of us retired, back when he could clear a cargo hold in the time it took me to sign the manifest, and when they cut him loose for age, they'd have put him down in a back room if I hadn't signed the other paper, the one that made him mine. So he flew with me. He rode the jump seat with his harness clipped to the frame, and most drops he slept through the whole descent, chin on his paws, an old soldier who'd earned the right to sleep. He did not sleep through the descent to Hesh. He came up off his paws when we hit the cloud deck. Not fast. Rook didn't do anything fast anymore. He came up the way an old man stands when he hears a sound in a house that's supposed to be empty, deliberate, quiet, every joint accounted for, and he faced the forward port, and his ears came up, and they stayed up. I watched him in the mirror while I brought us down through the murk. I have flown 10,000 hours with that dog breathing behind my shoulder, and I knew every one of his moods, and this was not a mood I had a name for. He wasn't afraid. Rook didn't do afraid. He was reading. Long way down, old man, I told him. He didn't look at me. He kept his eyes on the gray. The survey chief, a woman named Ansel who had been putting teams onto rocks like this for 30 years and had a voice like a closed door, leaned forward between the seats. Anything on approach? Clean, I said. Landing beacons live. Fog's thick, but it's just fog. I checked the read again. The Hesh Port Authority had given us a corridor and a pad and a promise that the surface was, in their words, settled, a word I'd have cause to chew on later. Vess want us on the apron in 10. They'll walk us in. Ansel grunted. She didn't like the Vess. Nobody who worked the survey lanes liked the Vess, and it wasn't the arrogance exactly, though there was plenty of that. It was that the Vess had built their whole civilization on their instruments. They were a species that had, somewhere far back, decided that their own senses were an embarrassment, unreliable, animal, a thing to be corrected, and had spent a few thousand years replacing every one of them with a machine that did the job better and lied less. They read the world through sensor cuffs and scan plates and long gray wands they carried like a priest carries a censer, and they trusted those readings the way you and I trust the ground under our feet. More. They trusted the readings over the ground. If a Vess's own eyes told him a wall was there and his scan plate read open air, he would walk into the wall, and then he would file a report saying the wall was a sensor artifact. I'm telling you this now because it matters. It matters more than anything else in the story. We came down onto the gray apron at Hesh, landing a little after their midday, though you couldn't have told midday from midnight by the light. The fog took the sun and spread it flat across the whole sky until the world was one even shadowless gray, bright enough to see by and not 1 degree brighter, a daylight with the warmth wrung out of it. The apron was old wet stone, black where it wasn't slick, and the fog lay on it in a layer maybe knee-deep, so that when we came down the ramp we walked into it up to our shins and couldn't see our own boots. Beyond the pad the fog stood up in a wall, 20 meters of visibility maybe. Past that, nothing. The world just stopped at a gray curtain in every direction, and behind the curtain you could feel the size of the place, the flat dead miles of it, without being able to see a single one. The Vess were waiting for us at the edge of the pad. There were 4 of them, tall a head and a half over Ansel, and she's not short, gray-skinned, narrow, wrapped in the layered gray coats they wear, so that in that fog they looked less like people standing there than like places where the fog had gotten thicker and decided to hold a shape. Each of them carried the wand. Two of them had the sensor cuffs banked up both forearms, glowing a soft, steady amber, the only color in the whole gray world. The one in front, who I took for their portwarden, had a voice box at his throat that turned his own language into a flat, careful trade. "Survey craft," the box said. "You are late by a small margin. The corridor is held for you. The surface is settled. You will remain within the marked line until we walk you to the station." A pause while the warden's own dark eyes moved over us, counting, and then the box added in exactly the same flat tone, "You have brought an animal." Because Rook had come down the ramp behind me. I hadn't ordered him to. I'd clipped his lead on out of habit and he'd come, and I felt the lead go tight and looked down, and there he was, standing in the fog to his chest, graying muzzle lifted, ears up, facing the gray wall past the edge of the pad. Not looking at the vests, looking past them, at the fog. "Working dog," I said. "Retired, he's mine, he stays with me." The warden's head tilted. It's a thing the vests do, a slow, deliberate tilt, and it always looks like curiosity and never is. One of the ones behind him, younger, I'd learn, a sensor tech named Olet, though I didn't have the name yet, passed his wand slowly over Rook, and I watched the amber light on his cuffs ripple and settle. "The animal registers as low function," the warden's box said. "Its sensory apparatus is degraded, old. You have brought a blind instrument to a survey." The flat voice managed, somehow, to be amused. "We understand humans keep such animals for sentiment. We will make an allowance. Keep it on its tether. It will read nothing here that our arrays have not already read better." I have thought about that sentence more times than I can count. It will read nothing here that our arrays have not already read better. He wasn't wrong about the arrays. The vests build the best sensor arrays in the arm. There is no one who reads a wider band of the world through a machine than they do. He wasn't even wrong about Rook, strictly. Rook was old. His hearing on the left was going. His eyes had a gray cast that matched his muzzle. If you scanned him, you'd get exactly what the tech got. A degraded instrument, past its service life, running at a fraction of what it once did. The trouble is that a fraction of what Rook once was is still more animal than the vests had left in their whole civilization. And there are things the fog held that no array reads, because the arrays had never been built to look for them, because the vests had decided a long time ago that anything a body could feel, and a machine couldn't, was superstition. Ansel beside me was watching Rook too. She'd worked with core dogs. She knew what a settled read looked like on one, and she knew this wasn't it. "Corin," she said low, "what's he got?" "I don't know yet," I said. And I didn't. But I clipped the lead shorter and I did not put him back on the craft, and later that was the only decision that mattered. They walked us in. It was maybe 400 meters from the pad to the station across the open apron, and the vests had it marked with a line of low posts, each one topped with a soft amber lamp, so that the path ran off into the fog as a string of dim floating lights that lost themselves in the gray after the fourth or fifth. We went single file, the warden in front, then Ansel and her two survey techs, then me, with Rook at my knee and the younger vest tech Olet behind us, and one more warden bringing up the rear. And I'll tell you what walking that apron was like, because the report doesn't capture it, and the report is a lie of omission. It was dead quiet. Not peaceful quiet, the fog ate sound the way it ate light, flat and total, so that the scuff of our boots came back muffled and wrong, and our own breathing sounded too close. The wall of gray moved with us. It stayed always the same distance off, 20 meters 30, close enough to feel and never close enough to see into, so that the whole walk you had the sense of moving through a small lit room that traveled with you across an enormous dark house. And the further we got from the pad, the more the fog seemed to lean. I want to be careful here because I'm a pilot and not a poet, and I don't want to dress this up. I'm not saying the fog moved. The fog was still. That was the wrong part. There was no wind on Hesh. The arrays confirmed it, flat calm, dead air, and a fog in dead air just sits. But this fog, out past the lamps, had a way of thickening and thinning that had nothing to do with any wind. Slow surges in the gray like something breathing on the far side of a curtain. And once, when I looked left, I would have sworn the wall of it had drawn closer while I wasn't watching. And then when I looked straight at it, it was back where it should be. The vests registered none of this. Their cuffs glowed steady amber the whole way in. The warden walked the line at an even pace, wand held out, and his box said at one point unprompted, "The surface is settled. Your unease is a common response to the visibility. It is not indicated by the readings." Which was the vest all over. A machine had told him the air was empty, so my unease was a fault in me. Rook didn't share my unease. That's the thing I need you to understand about him. The thing that separates a good working dog from a nervous one and separates what happened on Hesh from a ghost story. Rook was not spooked. A spooked dog shies and whines and pulls at the lead and gives you 100 false alerts because it's frightened of the dark. Rook did none of that. He walked the line at my knee dead calm, matched my pace exactly, and he simply would not stop watching the fog on our right. His head tracked it. As we walked, his muzzle stayed pointed off into the gray at an angle, the way a compass needle stays pointed while the ship turns, and every few steps the lead would go the faintest bit tight as some part of him wanted to turn and face it square and the rest of him. The disciplined part, the part that had cleared 10,000 cargo holds, kept him at heel because I hadn't released him. He wasn't afraid of what was out there. He was keeping track of it, and you do not keep track of nothing. About halfway across the apron, the screen came apart. The vest had brought a tracking beast, they call them scrin, and it's not really an animal in the way Rook is an animal. It's a thing they've bred down over centuries to do one job, which is to walk a line and register hazards, a living extension of the arrays, kept because even the vests admit some readings come cleaner off a nervous system than off a plate. It's a low gray thing, long, many-legged, and it had been walking beside the rear warden the whole way, silent, its own sensory palps combing the fog. It stopped, all at once, and it made a sound I have never heard an animal make before or since, not a scream. The scrin doesn't have the anatomy for a scream, but a high continuous keening that came out of it, the way steam comes out of a split pipe, flat and rising, and it went down on its belly on the wet stone and would not move. The rear warden's box said something short and irritated. He put his wand on the thing. He read it. And the flat trade came out of him. The scrin is malfunctioning. There is no hazard on the array. The animal is defective. Olet, the younger tech, had stopped too. I was close enough to see his cuffs, and for just a moment I'd swear to this in front of any board you like. His cuffs weren't steady. There was a flutter in the amber, a stutter there and gone, and Olet looked down at his own arm as if it had spoken out of turn, and then the light went steady again and his face, what a vest face does, closed. And here is where the whole thing turns, and it turns on Rook, and it turns quiet. Rook stopped. He didn't lunge or bark or bolt. He planted. He put his weight down on all four legs, low and square, facing the gray wall on our right, and he went absolutely still. His ears were forward. His hackles were not up. That's the detail nobody believes, and it's the most important one. His hackles were flat. His tail was neither up nor tucked. His breathing was slow and even. Everything about him was calm. And that calm was the most frightening thing I have ever seen an animal do, because I knew that calm. That was the calm he used to go still with over the one crate in the hold that was going to kill somebody. Not the 99 he flagged with a wag and a paw. The one. When Rook got quiet like that, all the way quiet, weight down, eyes locked, it meant here it's here and I have it, and I am not going to take my eyes off it, and you had better do exactly what I do. The lead was slack. He wasn't pulling toward the fog. He was holding a position between it and me. "Ansel," I said. My voice came out lower than I meant it to. "Stop the line." "Line stopped," she said. She'd already stopped it. She'd seen the scrin go down, and she'd seen my dog plant, and she was 30 years in the survey lanes, and she did not need it explained. "Corin, what does he have?" "Something on our right," I said. "In the fog, something the arrays aren't reading. I crouched slow and put my hand flat on Rook's shoulder, and I could feel him under my palm, no tremor, no fear, just a low, steady tension like a held breath, all of it aimed one direction. And it's close. The warden turned around. There is nothing on the array, the box said. The surface is settled. The screen is defective, and now your animal responds to the screen. This is a chain of animal error. You will reform the line and continue to the station. The fog produces these responses in low-function sensory systems. It is not indicated. And I looked up at him, this tall gray shape with a machine at his throat telling me my dog was wrong because his arm hadn't lit up. And I understood the whole shape of the vests in that one moment. Understood the thing that made them the best sensor builders in the arm and would have gotten us all killed on the gray apron. They had spent their whole history teaching themselves to trust the reading over the world. And the reading said empty. So to them the fog was empty, and a keening screen and a planted dog were two malfunctions, and the only correct response to a malfunction is to note it and proceed. I have been wrong before. I've been wrong about weather and wrong about fuel and wrong about people. But I have never in my life been wrong about that dog when he went all the way quiet, and I was not going to start on Hesh. We're not moving, I said. You will reform the line. We're not moving toward the fog, I said, and we're not standing here in the open with it. Ansel, your call. But I'm telling you what I've got, and I've got it on the best instrument on this apron, and it's not on his arm. Ansel looked at me. She looked at Rook, planted, calm, locked on the gray. She looked at the screen on its belly keening, and 30 years made the decision in about a second and a half. We back off the way we came, she said. Slow, we keep the dog between us and whatever he's watching. Corin, you and the dog set the line. Warden, she turned to the tall gray shape and her voice was the closed door again. You can walk your array into the fog if you love it so much. We're leaving. The warden's box started to say the surface was settled. And that was when the fog came in. I need to describe this exactly, because it's the part that got cut from the official filing, and it's the part that people most need to hear. And I've never found the words that make it sound like anything but a story. And it was not a story, it happened. I was there on my knees on wet black stone with my hand on my dog. The gray wall on our right, the one Rook had been tracking the whole walk-in, moved. Not all of it, a part of it. A section of the fog, maybe 10 meters across, came forward off the wall into the lit space where we could see. And it came without wind and against no wind. A slow, deliberate surge of thicker gray that rolled across the wet stone toward the line of us. And inside it, I will not tell you I saw a shape, because I didn't, not a clean one. And the men who claim they saw a shape are lying to make it easier to hold. What I saw was that the fog inside that surge was wrong. It was denser and it was darker at the center, and it moved with an intention that fog does not have. And the cold came off it ahead of it. A real cold. A drop you felt on your face, and the flat dead quiet got quieter, got total, so that even our breathing stopped mattering, and the thing that had been keeping track of us from behind the curtain stopped keeping track and started to come. The vest's arrays read nothing. I know this because Alit told me later. Flat calm, dead air, empty. Rook did not move. That's the whole thing. That's the center of it. Every instinct I have screamed to run, and the survey text behind me made small sounds and one of them broke and I heard boots on stone. And the cold came across the apron ahead of that surge of wrong gray. And my old dog, my degraded low-function past his service life dog, held his position between the fog and me and did not give 1 centimeter of ground. He didn't snarl. I've been asked that 100 times, did he go for it, did he snap, did he attack, and no. That's not what he was for, and it's not what he did. He planted, weight down, ears forward, and he faced the thing coming out of the fog, and he was calm, and he held, and everything in his body said this far. Not past me. A line drawn by an animal who had decided. The way animals decide. Faster and truer than any array. that the thing in the fog was real and was a threat and was his to stand against, and who had done the arithmetic that the vest couldn't do because they'd traded away the organ that does it, and had come out the far side of that arithmetic not afraid but certain. And the surge stopped. I felt it stop. I felt the cold reach a line about 2 meters ahead of Rook's nose and not cross it. The wrong gray gathered there, dense and dark and close enough that I could have thrown a stone into the heart of it, and it pushed. I felt it push. The way you feel a big animal test a fence with its shoulder, and Rook stood in front of it, all 70 pounds of graying retired dog, calm as a stone in a river, and did not move, and it did not cross. I don't know what it was. I want to be honest about that above everything, because Hesh is a place people tell stories about now, and the stories all end with an explanation and mine doesn't. I don't know what lives in the fog on the shelf world, what the Vess had been calling settled for however many years they'd been landing craft there, and losing the occasional one and filing it as sensor error. I don't know what a thing has to be to move against no wind and drop the temperature off its own body and red as empty air on the best arrays in the arm. I only know 2 things about it for certain. I know it was there. And I know it would not cross a line held by a calm dog. And I have turned that over 10,000 times, and the only sense I can make of it is the oldest sense there is. That whatever it was a predator, and it hunted things that ran, and it had never in its long gray life on that drowned world met a thing that faced it and was not afraid, and that when it finally met one, an old dog off a survey craft who had decided this far and no further, it did the thing predators do when they meet something they can't read as prey. It stopped, it weighed it, and it decided the meal wasn't worth the question. Back, Ansel was saying, very quietly, very steady, 30 years holding her voice flat. Everyone back. Follow the dog's line. Don't run. Don't run. Corin, bring him with us, walking pace, keep him facing it. And that's how we came off the gray apron. Walking backward, slow, in a loose knot, following the amber lamps back the way we'd come, with Rook setting the rear of the line, facing the fog the whole way, giving ground a step at a time and never once turning his back on it. I kept my hand on his harness, and I moved when he moved, and he moved when the fog let him move, and it followed us. I felt it follow. The cold stayed with us. The wrong dense gray stayed just past the line Rook held. It followed us the whole 400 meters back across that apron, testing, weighing, and never once crossing the space my dog stood in. The Vess came with us, I'll give them that. The warden had stopped talking about the array. Somewhere in those 400 backward meters the machine at his throat had gone quiet, and the tall gray shape had simply started moving with us, keeping close, and the 2 sensor techs were tight in the middle of the knot where the humans had put them without discussing it. And the scrin, the rear warden had scooped up the scrin, that low keening defective thing, and carried it. And I understood that the Vess had grasped, finally, in a way their whole civilization was built to prevent them from grasping. That the 2 malfunctioning animals had been the only working instruments on the field. We reached the pad. We got up the ramp, humans first, then the Vess, who had nowhere else to go and knew it, and I was not going to leave 4 people standing on that stone, whatever species they were. And Rook came up last, backward, still facing the gray, and I brought the ramp up under him. And the last thing I saw of the gray apron before the ramp sealed was the wall of fog standing across the pad at the exact line where the lamps ended, dense and dark and close, held there, waiting. And not 1 meter closer than my dog had let it come. I flew us up through the deck and out. Nobody said anything for a long time. Rook lay down on the deck plate behind my seat, sighed, one long shuddering old dog sigh, put his chin on his paws and went asleep. Just like that. The job was done, and the job being done meant he could sleep, and he slept the way he'd slept through every descent before Hesh, dead to the world, twitching once at some dream, an old soldier who'd earned it. It was Olet, the young sensor tech, who came forward. The Vess don't apologize. It's not that they're too proud exactly. It's that an apology requires you to believe your own judgment was the thing that failed, and a Vess believes his instruments failed, or the conditions were anomalous, or the animal was defective. Never that his judgment, resting on the reading, was the whole error. So I didn't expect an apology, and I didn't get one. What I got was Olet crouching down, awkward, all long gray limbs, beside my sleeping dog, and looking at him for a long time with those dark eyes, and then reaching out one narrow hand and holding it, not touching, just above Rook's gray muzzle, the way you'd hold your hand over a flame to know it was real. His voice box was turned down low. "The array read nothing," he said. "I read nothing. My cuffs read settled air the entire time." A pause. "There was a flutter once, near the screen. I recorded it as a fault and I suppressed it." Another pause, longer, and when the box spoke again, the flat trade had something in it I hadn't heard from a Vess before, something that in a human I'd have called shame. The flutter was the reading. It was the only true reading my instruments produced on Hesh, and I corrected it, because it did not agree with the array. "Yeah," I said, "the array was reading a thing your people built the array to read. It wasn't built to read what was out there." "No," Olet said. He was still looking at Rook. "It was not." And then, quietly, the thing that I've held on to, the thing that made me think maybe the Vess aren't past saving after all, your instrument was. I looked back at my dog. Gray muzzle, going deaf on the left, eyes gone cloudy, past his service life, low function, degraded. A blind man's pet kept for sentiment, sleeping on the deck plate of a survey craft, climbing out of a fog that had wanted to eat all 9 of us and hadn't, because he'd said no. "He's not an instrument," I said. "That's your whole problem right there. You spent 3,000 years turning yourselves into instruments because you decided the animal in you couldn't be trusted." I watched Rook breathe. "He's the thing you threw away. And out there on that apron, he was the only one of us who could still hear the house wasn't empty." Olet didn't answer that. I don't think he had the frame for it. But he stayed crouched there a while longer, this tall gray creature from a people who read the world through machines, watching an old Earth dog sleep, and I let him, because you have to start somewhere. They put a marker on Hesh after that. Not a warning exactly, the Vess don't do warnings. A warning admits the reading can be wrong, but a note in the corridor data, a small flag on the shelf world that says the surface reads settled and is not, and that survey craft should carry, where possible, a biological sensory asset of the older type. That's the phrasing. That's as close as the Vess will come to writing it down. A biological sensory asset of the older type. I know what they mean. They mean a dog. They mean the thing you can't build and can't scan and can't correct. The thing that knows the house isn't empty when every instrument you own swears it is. The thing you'd walk right past in a grocery store and never look at twice. Rook's gone now. He was old on Hesh and he got older after, the way they do. And one morning he didn't come up off his paws and I signed the last paper, the one nobody else would sign for him. And I did it myself, out on a hillside on a green world under a sun with the warmth left in it, a long way from any fog. I don't fly much anymore. But I still get people asking, the way people do, whether the arrays got better after Hesh, whether the Vess ever figured out what was in that fog, whether anybody built the instrument that could finally read the shelf world empty or full. And I tell them the truth, which is that I don't know, and I don't care, and they're asking the wrong question. Nobody needed to build that instrument. It had 4 legs and a gray muzzle, and it slept through every descent but one. And when the one came, when the fog came off the wall against no wind and the best arrays in the arm read nothing, it planted its feet on the wet black stone and it never looked away. The instrument swore the fog was empty. The old dog knew better. He always did.